Today is going to be starting a late day for the news, but let's do the news. I'm awake, I'm kicking, feel a little bit better than I did earlier today. So let's kick some ass. News is coming out of London dealing with Julian Assange, or the latest news on Julian Assange. Apparently, Moreno, the president of Ecuador, has reached a deal with the UK authorities. Now, we know that Moreno was seeking some level of debt relief, with Julian Assange as being a pawn for this debt relief. He said before that this has been a stone in his shoe, because pressure has been applied to him from the United States and from the UK, which is essentially a client state of the United States at this point. Let's go to the story, though. What it boils down to is Ecuador and the UK have reached an agreement that has paved the way for Julian Assange to leave the embassy. Let's put leave in quotes. Ultimately, he's trying to evict Julian Assange from the embassy, but due to legal stuff, for his status, I guess is frowned upon for pulling it off. I mean, and I would imagine that he could force him out the embassy if he wanted to at any particular time. International law is at the barrel of a gun. I don't necessarily think international law exists. So, for that matter, he doesn't necessarily want to do that. He wants to do it in some kind of draped in bureaucracy way. Now, in this particular case, the assurances that he received from Britain was that he would not be extradited to a country that has a death penalty. This, however, does not exclude him from being extradited to the United States. We know that there's a sealed indictment on Julian Assange because it was accidentally leaked, either incompetence or intentionally, but that indictment has been sitting there for years. Julian Assange responds to this, and his legal team responds to this in a whisper. It's not in a whisper. No. You shouldn't be prosecuted for publishing true and factually true information. WikiLeaks wasn't the one that hacked them. None of these places were the ones that hacked them. This information was given to WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks published the information that was legit, that was true. All of it was true. I guess I'm making a point. There's a difference between an organization going in and hacking somebody as opposed to somebody publishing information that's factually true, which is no different than what New York Times, Associated Press, or any other of these media outlets would do. The only difference here is that they actually publish factually true information. I guess what I'm saying is this small body of this kind of website is doing the work of all of these other media organizations. Fact of the matter is, why is it that WikiLeaks is the organization that's being attacked in this way and the other ones are not? I think that's a definitive and an interesting question to ask. Why WikiLeaks? How is it that WikiLeaks is the one that can get this information and in these other places not? I find that to be an amazing question. And it brings into question this idea of media in general and what media is putting out. And if it was in any way really challenging power, in the same way that WikiLeaks is challenging power by publishing factually true information, with the same intelligence agencies or the United States government be going after them also. I find it to be an amazingly interesting question, but I would say this. That indictment has been there for a while. Julian Assange has said that indictment has been there for a while. We just got evidence of this recently, that the indictment, when they accidentally leaked it, and fact of the matter is, they will most likely extradite him to the United States, because even though they can't necessarily extradite him to a country that has capital punishment, like the United States with barbarians, if given assurances that we won't murder him, then you can kind of go around that legal loophole. Either way, long story short, they're trying to evict him from the embassy under this idea of him, quote unquote, leaving the embassy. And his legal team has said, kick rocks. We're not going anywhere. We're feeding our cat. We're cleaning our room, and we're going to be here longer. He is a political prisoner. Let's call it what it is. He is literally a political prisoner. He's been in that embassy for 6 years. That embassy is not necessarily a jail cell, but that embassy is a jail cell, if that makes sense. Ultimately, is not there because he necessarily wants to be there. He's there because they're prosecuting him. The Telegraph article that lists this made reference to sexual assault charges and all this other stuff. There were allegations of sexual assault. He wasn't charged with anything. And this is, an end run around any level of decency. I mean, ultimately, they said they were allegations. He said, look, I will absolutely talk to you about these allegations, fair enough, but I don't want to be extradited, in which case, they wouldn't agree to that, which means that they most likely was going to extradite him. Those charges were dropped. Now, him seeking asylum in the embassy, Britain has used this to say, well, he didn't show up in court. Well, he didn't show up in court because he was seeking asylum in the embassy. He was granted asylum, but you're still holding the charge against him because he didn't show up in court. He was seeking asylum in an embassy. That is essentially, you're charging him with a crime when he has every legal right in the world to seek asylum when he's going to be prosecuted in this kind of kangaroo court. Let's look at the story, make sure I didn't get anything wrong in my explanation of this. Let's start here. Ecuador, UK guarantees for Assange to leave embassy. All right, what does that mean? Moreno. The road is clear for Mr. Assange to take the decision to leave, Moreno said, referring to written assurances he said he received from Britain. Those written assurances don't mean anything. Moreno didn't say he would force Assange to leave, but activist legal team is considering the next step. The mounting tensions has drawn Moreno closer to the position of Britain, for which years has been barred from law from extraditing suspects to jurisdictions where they would face capital punishment. But nothing is preventing them from extraditing him to the United States if prosecutors were to pledge not to seek the death penalty. You got to believe those pledges. Assange has long maintained that he faced under seal charges by the United States reveal highly sensitive government information for the website. Those fears were heightened when the United States prosecutors last month mistakenly referenced criminal charges against him in an unsealed case. The Associated Press and other outlets have reported that Assange is indeed facing unspecified charges. Now, let's keep going. One of Mr. Assange's legal team plans drawing up for the event for him to be evicted within hours, days, or weeks, the Times reported. I expect Mr. Assange to lose his asylum status imminently, a source told the paper. This means that he will be expelled from the embassy. When this will happen is impossible to say. This is Telegraph. Julian Assange's team making plans for imminent expulsion from Ecuadorian embassy. Let's keep going in this way. Julian Assange rejects UK and Ecuadorian deal for him to leave the embassy. And what it boils down to is this line. The suggestion that as long as the death penalty is off the table, Mr. Assange need not fear persecution is obviously wrong, said Mr. Polak. No one should have to face criminal charges for publishing truthful information. Right there. Right there. Since such charges appear to have been brought against Mr. Assange in the United States, Ecuador should continue to provide him asylum. Meaning Britain is going to extradite him to the United States. He is a political prisoner seeking asylum in an Ecuadorian embassy that's in Britain. Britain, a client state of the United States, is going to allow him to be extradited. Let's be honest, they're holding him because he didn't show up in court. He didn't show up in court because he was seeking asylum in the embassy. I mean, this is somewhat of an end run. Now, these charges are in the United States. How does the United States have jurisdiction over other countries in regards to the information that's being published? You have protection of the press, supposedly, in the United States. I suppose that seeing as they are not going after the press in the way that they're going after Julian Assange, there's some distinction between Assange and the press, and I suppose that is because he publishes factually true information that challenges the status quo and challenges power. The intelligence services hate his guts because he makes their job harder. If you remember, he published the information showing that the CIA was hacking the world and was essentially hacking or had mass surveillance all across the United States and had intervened into the other affairs of other countries all around the world, published that information. It was Julian Assange, if I'm not mistaken, no, I'm wrong on that part. Yeah, I was going to the Twitter thing where they were trying to foment a revolution in Cuba using their own version of Twitter. It's fucking nonsense. I guess I'm making a point. This is going to open the door for further persecutions of the press. If you remember, Obama was using the Espionage Act more than any other president. And this was, again, going after whistleblowers. This opens the door for them to prosecute the press. And it is a sad, sad day that they would bitch and moan and complain and stand up for Jim Acosta showboating. But when somebody who's actually doing the fucking job, doing their job, eating their lunch, he's sitting at a goddamn embassy. Fucking amazing. Snowden had to go to Russia of all places, in order to escape persecution from the United States. I find this to be amazing. When you get to the point where your country, we're releasing factually true information about the things that your government is doing, and your government gets to the point of saying, all right, this guy's releasing too much information that's true about our intentions around the world, our ill intentions around the world, that's completely showing this idea of justice and liberty to be a farce. You have problems. How do you know what your government is doing when everything is hidden behind this idea of national security? Waste, fraud, and abuse. Do you realize they've just audited the Pentagon, and the people have come back saying the Pentagon is unauditable? You can't audit it. There's so many fabrications, and they're just wasting and throwing money away. Trillions. Wasted. Trillions. Julian Assange is... I'm just saying, this is... it is a sad day when the person who's telling you that there is a problem turns out to be the problem. It's like going into the animal agriculture places and showing them people abusing and kicking cows and kicking pigs and all this other stuff. And the problem here is not the fact that the guys are kicking cows or abusing those animals. The problem is that you're showing them abusing those animals. It's not the problem that the cops are beating the shit out of people. The problem is that you're showing the fact that cops are beating the shit out of people. You have problems! You have problems in your country when you're going after the person who's showing you the fact that there are problems. When they showed you the Associated Press reporter getting murdered by a guy in a helicopter who didn't know who the fuck he was shooting at, the problem here was not the fact that the guy was in a helicopter not knowing who he was killing. The problem was the fact that you showed it. Please tell me you understand that there's a problem in this process when the people who are revealing errors, misjudgments, crimes gets prosecuted, not the fact or not the crimes themselves. Long story short, they're trying to evict Julian Assange out of the embassy, and Ecuador and the UK have agreed to do so. His legal team is looking towards imminent expulsion. So let's see this here. And I'm probably not going to keep this one long because I got to be honest, this was a rough day. Good day, but a rough day. PV for the TYT promo vid control opposition amongst the left. Okay. If you look, it was settled outside court and also had many court dates with expensive lawyers. He won a lot. George Terry and status quo, they're wrongfully firing settlement. What are you guys talking about? Thanks, Jamarl, for keeping it real on important topics. Jimmy Dore is awesome, and he created himself. Well, Jimmy Dore is awesome, but he did start on TYT. TYT did create Jimmy Dore and give him that. I mean, come on. Why are you guys talking about TYT? Why are you talking about TYT? All right, I'm going to end this. TYT reported that bullshit Guardian story. Oh, that's why you're talking about TYT. All right, that means I need to have a conversation about TYT on the next video. All right, I will end this here. I tried to get Richard Wolf on today. Him and I missed each other. I also tried. I'm going to try to get Dore back on. Today was a weird day, man. Well, I'll talk about it in the next video. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. McKetty 54, you rock. Plus, I'm a conservative. Oh, thank you, McKetty. This channel doesn't take the perspective that conservatives aren't people too. Wesley Walker, he's one of the people who watch my channel. I was making this argument that Steve Bannon, the argument that Bannon was making, was taking socialist argument and rhetoric. And I was making a point that sells. Like, it's not that people on the right aren't hurting. These aren't, unfeeling monsters. They have a different perspective of the world. I think they're less sympathetic. But fact of the matter is, honesty sells. Like, people know when you're bullshitting them and not. Especially these days when you have the internet and all this other stuff. It's harder to lie and to stick to it. And you end up discrediting yourself when you do that, especially from the standpoint of the left. Conservatives have college debt. Conservatives have healthcare bills. Conservatives want to drink clean water and clean air. No, they don't believe the Democratic Party on this front because the Democratic Party has essentially led them astray. And if you remember, a lot of these conservatives used to be Democrats when Democrats was actually representing the interests of the public. So I am not in this mindset that, all of these conservatives are unfeeling monsters who don't necessarily, I don't believe that at all. There's a slice of the population that you can get. You don't need the whole population. You just need a majority. And that majority focusing on issues of workers, or focusing on issues of Social Security, Medicare, the things that people agree with, corruption in regards to politics, especially corruption. Those are things that you can get a winning majority on. Fuckery, giving money and tax breaks and all this other stuff. Fact of the matter is, if Hillary Clinton had won that election, you would have still given a tax break to the top 1%. How does that not discredit the left? How? So I'm going to end this here because I have another video. Julian Assange. All right. I'll see you guys in a few. If you enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And you can always support the content through PayPal or Patreon. I say PayPal or Patreon because if some people tell me that they've been having issues with Patreon. So, again, even if it's $1, please consider assisting the show. You guys keep the show ticking along. This is my show, but it's also your show because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have a show. So, thanks all. I'll see you shortly.